how the fees are calculated, Mr. Nelson brought up, his concern about the increase in the community Group A system permit. It's going up $25. That's not a ton of money, but it is about 15% or so. He wants to know why. Perhaps going into some of the calculation of how we actually figure the fees could answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fee methodology is a very complicated spreadsheet where we input all costs, and then those costs are allocated to the various programs.
How was the spreadsheet itself developed?
The spreadsheet was developed by a consulting company that was hired by the county, by the Board of County Commissioners, actually starting with CDS, with Community Development Services, in response to some fee issues there. And so it was piloted with Community Development Services, and then it was required by the Board of County Commissioners to be used by other departments, including Public Health. Okay.
And the intention behind the development of that and why we use it?
Is really to get full cost recovery. We're required by RCW to get full cost recovery, no more, no less, for the services that we offer. And previously, all of our fees were really based on estimates. We were able to do some occasional time studies, but there was really no good methodology for including a lot of overhead costs like computers and vehicles and office supplies, things like that. How do you apply those costs to individual permit fees? This methodology was developed with that in mind and has a way to allocate all those costs across programs.
So it takes into consideration what we pay the employee, what it costs us to turn on the lights, to heat the building, what we pay for insurance, every little piece, what we have to pay for the computers, the paper, the pens, every little piece of that is figured into a fee, for instance. So I, as a client or as a customer, need a septic drain field replacement fee. I actually did need that at one point. That's what experience I have. And mixed into that fee is the time for someone to come out, the benefits that are paid to that for that person, the fuel, the insurance, a piece of the vehicle, a piece of their computer, the whole ball of wax. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the way it does it is it compiles all those costs, and then depending on how many staff hours go to different programs, it actually creates an hourly rate per staff that includes not only salaries and benefits, but also all of those costs, and then applies that hourly rate to the time spent on each permit.
Okay. Now, does the number of permits that we expect to get in a certain year also have an impact on the fee?
It does. We're able to plug in our estimates for how much business we think we're going to do, because that takes into account, what our total costs are. And so, if we do less, then the fees would go up to be able to cover those costs. If we do more, then the fees hypothetically go down.
So can you explain that, because that almost seems opposite, right? If you do more, the fee goes down. If you do less, the fee goes up. Why is that again?
Well, essentially, if we're seeing an increase like we are now, for example, in septic permits and activity, but we have the same expenses, we have the same staff doing that, hypothetically, the fee would go down because the cost would be spread out over a greater number of permits.
Oh, I see.
So the per permit cost would hypothetically go down if all costs remain the same over time, but we continue to do more and more business. Does that make sense? Yeah,
let me explain that back to you and see if I got it correct. So say we have one staff person with one computer, one car, one insurance, one tank of gas, whatever. With that amount of resources, we can do 10 permits or we can do 100 permits, say. And if we can do 100 permits, the cost per permit is actually less, versus if we're only doing 10 permits, but we still have to have that person, the cost per permit is a lot higher because each one has to bear a larger burden of the share of those costs.
Exactly.
Okay.
So your fixed costs are the same.
I see.
Right, and that that assumes the costs stay the same. Now, as we know, costs go up over time, and then there's also a breaking point that we've reached, for example, in septic, where we actually need to increase expenses to be able to continue to do the volume that we're doing, which is why we have the increase in FTE.
Okay. So could you take a look at the Group A costs specifically? Do you have that in front of you?
I'm trying to find it on our list here. So the staff time that we have right now in inadequate water supply determination for Group A water systems, we have 0.25 hours for front desk staff. We have 0.25 hours for environmental health staff review and processing. And then we have half an hour for what we call finalization, which includes, calling the customer, issuing the final determination, as well as scanning and archiving and the things that we have to do kind of on the back end. So there's a total of 1 hour of staff time, 0.25 front desk time, and 0.75 environmental health staff time.
So is that based, that 1 hour, is that based on estimates, or is that based on actual data from the last period or two that you've been
A
collecting?
little bit of both. We have the data. There were some fluctuations and some inaccuracies in the data. Let me pull up my actual time analysis and look at that one and see what we ended up doing. So our time data actually showed that we spend 1.2 hours per Group A adequate water supply. Half an hour of that is actually front desk time, and 0.67 of that was environmental health time.
So you're actually underestimating.
So we're actually underestimating.
Okay. And you're underestimating because you think there might be some problems with the data, and you're.
Yeah, I mean, we just felt more comfortable underestimating rather than overestimating, and because it was our first time doing this time study, we saw just throughout the whole process some inconsistencies, so we wanted to kind of err on the side of caution with some of this.
So when we originally implemented this new system, we did it based mostly on estimates, right? And so this is the first change that's based on actual data, which is why we're seeing some of the fluctuation.
Right.
And you're going to keep collecting data and hopefully make these things as broad and so they can grab as many of the different types of facilities that are out there. But in some particular cases, you've got to look at them a little harder. And we want to be sensitive to some of the nonprofit groups and the work that they do. Obviously, we can't ask the for-profits to cover those costs either, so we've got to figure out, where the balance is. I know we won't be able to accomplish that today. I'm certainly in support of moving forward at this point, but I would encourage staff to engage with them and see if there's a way we can make that work.
Yeah, and we absolutely will.
Those are all the questions I had. Thanks for asking that one, by the way.
Okay.
Is there anything further from you, Dr. Azrio?
No.
Okay.
Want to entertain a motion to adopt resolution, Board of Health Resolution 2018-002.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2018-002 from the Board of Health. All those in favor?
Actually,
Or are we going to do Board of County Commissioners first?
no, the Board of Health is fine, but point of order, are you going to ask for comments on the motion?
Yes, thank you. So
Sure.
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Okay, I actually do have some comments. First of all, I want to thank staff and the public, and I know there are members of the public that engaged in some of this process as well, especially around the discussion for adding additional levels of service in on-site septic. I know that that's been kind of an issue over at the health department, just within workload considerations and how quickly we've been able to turn over some of those permits. We've got some really dedicated staff over there who work really, really hard, but they've been working a little too hard in some cases, especially during the high season, just to deliver what they think is an adequate level of service. It'll be good to add a little bit of help over there. And we had some good support from the industry on that as well. They actually came up and said, we don't mind paying a little bit more. And we think that we need to do that in order to retain staff and to keep things going. So we really, really appreciate that. I also just want to comment on the improvement in the data this year. Good job. Obviously, we've got some gaps still, right? And some of that is a training thing, and some of that is just better accountability and holding folks accountable. We need to get in that habit. This is really the best way to do this. but it only works well when we know exactly, how much time it takes in each category. So continuing to improve that will only better inform these decisions moving forward, which provides a better product to the public. So keep going there. Appreciate it very much. I think it's working well. There's some fluctuation here as the chairman, it always seems weird to call you chairman, but it's true, Madam Chairman, has mentioned, where there's some increases and some decreases, and that's a reflection of the refining of the process over time. I want to call out at least one, though, and that's in the water program. We're noticing some significant increases there with regard to, I think the Group A system was called out, the adequate water supply determinations, also our little striking on here. That, I'll remind the members of the board, in many ways is a function of the fact that we streamlined the process for community systems, specifically in urban growth areas and in the master plan resort last year, which decreased the number of adequate water supply determinations that we received in the office, which means that those that do need a water supply determination, adequate water supply determination, have to bear a larger share of the cost. Staff warned us that revenue would go down. We knew that it would have to be made up by others. While it doesn't feel good to do that, it probably is the right decision, because in many cases, folks who were getting an adequate water supply determination based off a municipal system really didn't need to do that. And they were paying a fee that they probably shouldn't have been paying. And so those who really do need it, who are on individual wells, are just going to have to pay a little bit more. It doesn't feel good, but it's probably the right way to go. I do have a couple of changes that I think need to be made, so I'd offer them as amendments. First of all, the handout that has on it this table that says mitigation and metering, that should be included as Exhibit A, as part of Exhibit A. It's not currently in the packet, and it wasn't online, so I'd like the record to show that this is included as Exhibit A. I'd also like to make an amendment to this exhibit on the second bullet for each package. Instead of it saying $3 auditor processing, I'd like it to say $3 auditor finance processing, because there are other charges that go to the auditor's office for filing, recording documents against parcels, and so we don't have some confusion there. I'd also like to make sure that it's clear that we are striking the trust account water right administration fee line item. That was not in your original motion, but it was called out by staff, and it's being replaced by this line item in the mitigation and metering chart. So we need to make sure that that's also out. And then I think that's it for this particular resolution. So I would offer an amendment that those two changes get made to the previous resolution. I'm sorry, to the previous motion.
So I'll make a comment, appreciate the staff's work on, a lot of work on it and trying to make these fees fair. You can tell that, so appreciate that. And second your amendment.
Thank you.
Okay.
vote on the
So are we
amendments.
voting on the amended motion?
So we'll need to make a, it's not an amended motion until we vote on the amendment, so we'll have to vote on the amendment first.
Okay, so board before us is a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2018-002 as amended
Actually,
on the amendment.
we have to approve the amendment to the previous motion. So what's before us is the amendment,
Okay.
which is adding this as Exhibit A, making the change to this bullet, and then striking the trust account water right administration fee line item.
All right. All those in favor of the amendments?
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Motion passes. Board before us is a motion and a second to approve resolution 2018-002 as amended. We've had some discussion. I'll just add that I really appreciate the health department's time and energy in collecting data to help make the decisions with the fee schedule fair and equitable to the citizens of Kittitas County. I think it's a really important effort, and I think we should just continue through this process and continue to fine-tune things as we move along. I'd also like to thank the members of the public that came today for your testimony, and we certainly are committed to working with not only you but other members of the public to work through these processes and either find different areas of where to that best suits your needs, or to use your input as we make decisions in our processes here at the county level. So with that, I will be voting in favor of this motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Motion passes. Next is a resolution for the Board of County Commissioners.
Madam Chairman, we do have a resolution. I will move to approve Resolution 2018-083, a resolution adopting the amended 2018 Kittitas County Public Health Fee Schedule with one amendment to the resolution. On the fifth whereas, it reads, the 2018 Public Health Department Fee Schedule is consistent with the Board of Health's direction, is attached here to and incorporated by reference as Exhibit A. I think we're either missing punctuation or the word and, so I will recommend that we insert the word and in the fifth finding between the word direction and is. So I will offer that as my motion.
Okay. I will go ahead and second. Is there any discussion?
Just by way of discussion, I want to mention one more thing that I didn't mention, that I forgot to mention in my previous comments. There's one other change that reflects increases in the fee schedule that I want to call out, and that's in the solid waste fees. I want to call that out because that's really specific, not necessarily to increase costs at the health department, but really as a function of reduced cost or reduced funding of our community development block grant funds through the state. We've seen, I think, over a 50% reduction over the last two bienniums, excuse me, from the state pass-through funds for community development block grants. That money is spent to support our solid waste programs in several different ways, including cleaning up illegal dump sites and other things across the county. And we have been really handicapped over the last several years as we continue to see those funds go down and down and down. It forces us to charge the few solid waste facilities we have in the county higher and higher fees for inspection and other things so that we have the funds to operate our program, which then turns into higher fees to the consumer for disposing of trash and other materials. That is a direct function of the legislature not providing adequate funding. During this last legislative session, they had a $1.26 billion surplus. $1.26 billion, and we saw decreased funding again in this particular program. So for those of you who have a relationship with your state legislators and others, or have a line to the state legislature or would like to make comments to them, this is something that is coming right down to your daily life and the amount of money that you have to spend each and every day disposing of garbage here in our county. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
May I make a comment?
You may.
Okay.
I
just
guess.
wanna-
It's a
I
little
don't know.
inappropriate.
Yeah.
I don't know, is
I
it going to
just
be
wanna-
something supporting?
Not that I want to put Commissioner Joe on the spot, but I just want to correct something for the record. It's not community development block grants.
CDBG, it's not? What is
No,
it?
it was
CPG?
previously called Coordination Prevention Grant, and
CPG,
the funds
excuse
come
me,
from
thank
the
you.
MOTCA account at the state, which is Model Toxics Control
Control
Account.
account, that's
Yeah.
right.
And it's now being changed from CPG, Coordination Prevention Grant, to Local Solid Waste Financial Assistance.
Okay, great.
So, just a
Thank you
correction for the
yeah,
record.
you're right, it was CPG, not CDBG. We have both, and I get them confused sometimes. I knew what it was for, I just don't always get the name right, so thank you for bringing that up. And the MACA funding, Model Toxics Control Account, is, that funding is derived, I think, from gas tax and other things. And as the legislature continues to produce incentives for electric cars, people are buying less gas. It's a whole vicious kind of cycle, so. But thank you, I appreciate that.
All right. And
Soapbox off.
I have no other comment other than thank you again. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you. We are now closing the joint public hearing for Board of County Commissioners and Board of Health in regards to the updates. And we will be opening our regular Board of Health public. No?
We still have two public hearings. for
Oh,
code changes.
okay.
Starting with chapter code changes.
Which one next? Oh, chapter 13. Okay, sorry. We do have another one. I can find it.
Page 40 on your packet.
Okay. We will now open this public hearing for Kittitas County Code, Chapter 13, proposed revisions. Ms. Moore?
Good morning, Erin Moore, Water Resources Program Coordinator for the Public Health Department, for the record. So I am in the process of proposing changes to Kittitas County Code, Chapter 1303 and Chapter 1335. So start with 1303, which is the definitions section, page 42 and 43 of your packet. So we are preparing these definition change or additions, and some of my changes to Chapter 1335 are in preparation for the WAC repeal that Ecology agreed to as part of the settlement agreement. So that's part of why we're changing this part of the code. So we are proposing to add the definitions for common ownership, parcel, proximate, and total water supply available, TWSA. Then we are requesting to change 1335-027, section 2, or number 2. We're removing the Department of Ecology reference as part of, so when folks get their mitigation, they'll require a certificate of water budget neutrality. So we're striking from Department of Ecology. Water budget neutral determinations come, we can process those in the form of our mitigation certificates. Also in number 3, we are removing, as those terms are defined in WAC 173-539A, also part of the WAC repeal, receive funding for 10 years.
Okay, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
That was easy, guys. Thank you.
Now is the public comment period of this public hearing, joint public hearing. If any of the member of the public wishes to make a comment, now would be your opportunity. Anyone at all? Anyone at all? Hearing none, I'm now going to close the public comment period of the public hearing. Board before us, we'll do the Board of Health first.
Madam Chairman, I'll move to approve Ordinance 2018-001, amendment of Kittitas County Codes, Chapter 13, with the following amendments or changes to the ordinance. I do have some changes. The first whereas reads, pursuant to the 2014 settlement agreement with the Department of Ecology, the Department of Ecology promised to eventually consider repeal of the Upper Kittitas groundwater rule. I'd like to change that to strike the word promised, strike the word eventually, and strike the word consider, and replace them with this. Replace promise with committed, and replace eventually consider with quote, initiate rulemaking proceedings that will propose the repeal. So it would then read, pursuant to the 2014 settlement agreement with the Department of Ecology, the Department of Ecology committed to initiate rulemaking proceedings that will propose the repeal of the Upper Kittitas County, or Upper Kittitas groundwater rule found in Chapter 173-539A WAC. That is consistent language with the settlement agreement. On the second whereas, I would like to strike the word potential, which is the last word of the first line, so that it would no longer say regarding this potential repeal, but just say regarding this repeal. On the third whereas, first line, I would like to strike the word possible, so it would read the Board of County Commissioners desires such repeal rather than such possible repeal. And then finally, on the fourth whereas, insert today's date in the blank that states when the date the hearing actually occurred.
Okay, we have a motion.
So your motion is the Board of Health motion, right?
Yes.
So I'll second that and the amendments.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Just by way of discussion, first of all, I'd like to support any change to any code that strikes reference to the Department of Ecology in general. So that's fantastic. Let's bring that forward every single day. Secondly, I just want to thank staff for their work in putting these amendments together. This is really taking the next step in making sure that all of the elements of the settlement agreement are followed through with. The county's done a really great job going over and above everything that we committed to. This really puts kind of the ball in Ecology's court to make sure that they follow through with their commitments as well. So it's a good day. Appreciate that very much.
Any further comment?
No.
Okay. I'd just like to thank staff again. I know this has been a huge project, and it's just one piece of the challenges we've been facing with the water program, the metering program that you all have been working on for several years now, and I just appreciate your continued hard work. So thank you once again for bringing this forward. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Motion passes. Now we will be voting on an ordinance from the Board of County Commissioners.
Madam Chairman, I would like to offer a motion to approve Ordinance 2018-009, amendment of Kittitas County Codes, Chapter 13, with the same changes to the ordinance as previously discussed in the Board of Health ordinance.
Okay. We have a motion for ordinance number 2018-009 as amended. I'll go ahead and second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. We have one more.
Wanted them separate? Okay, so those two are for the well. So those need to be
This is for the Board of Health.
as well.
Madam Chairman, I will offer a motion to approve ordinance number 2018-002 for the Kittitas County Board of Health, an amendment of Kittitas County Codes, Chapter 13.4. Just for clarification, this is in reference to the metering requirements, is that right? As previously discussed by staff. Okay, great.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I have a question just to understand where it says we're voting to amend 13.40, and it says the county commission already voted unanimously to approve the changes to 13.40. That's from an earlier.
Why does it say that? I think we should probably strike that line in both ordinances, actually, because that's not correct. We voted unanimously to approve proposed changes to Chapter 13 previously, but they weren't in reference to 13.4. So I think the best thing to do would actually be to strike that finding on each of these. Do you want to offer that as an amendment?
Amendment to strike the last.
I'll second the amendment.
whereas.
Okay, we have a second and a motion and a second to amend the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well.
Aye, motion passes. Board before us is ordinance number 2018-002 as amended. Do we have a motion? We had a motion and a second on the amended motion. All those in favor?
Just one question, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Staff understands what the amendment was? Okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too will vote aye, motion passes.
Madam Chairman, I will offer a motion to approve ordinance 2018-010 for the Kittitas County Board of County Commissioners. This is an amendment of Kittitas County Codes Chapter 13.4, also amending this ordinance to strike the final finding, which would be the fifth whereas on the ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt ordinance number 2018-010 as amended. I'll go ahead and second. Is there any discussion on this?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I too will vote aye, motion passes. And our public hearings are now complete. No. One more. Oh my God. You're killing me. Okay, one more. Is this it?
This is.
Okay. All right. Ms. Lamb.
Kristen Lamb, Environmental Supervisor. This is the last one, I promise. We are proposing some changes to our current code, Chapter 1330, Group B water system requirements. Most of the changes are rearranging the existing code and including adoption by reference, the WAC 246291, which applies to Group B water systems. The Washington State Department of Health is encouraging all local health jurisdictions to consider adopting and implementing a Group B ordinance, and that encouragement comes with funding. Localized control is both less costly to people at the state and county and more protective of public health. So our proposals would replace our full Joint Plan of Responsibility, or JPR, with the Washington State Department of Health, and replace it with a full Group B program. So right now, our full JPR is given $10,000 per year, and implementing a local ordinance gives us $20,000 a year. In addition, it allows us to be more protective of public health to our public water systems. We're not at this time proposing any permit fees or annual inspections. Implementation of this Group B program and the new sections and adoptions to our code do not currently exceed our staff capabilities. There's a little more math, but it's not too time consuming. So I should have started, apologies. The staff report begins for this on page 78. You'll see a red line of Chapter 1330 on page 80, a clean version of that code on page 84. The ordinances that we worked on with DPA Stephanie Carton, starting on page 88. So you'll see new sections in red, adoption by reference, the WAC that outlines what we need to implement in our program. Applicability, we've specified 4 hours to our pump test duration, and added some general administration and compliance and enforcement sections that will allow us to respond to water systems that might be contaminated and charge for the services they might require from public health. There's also amendments to the existing chapter, which is mostly just rearranging so that it makes sense and more consistent with other codes. Once we, assuming you approve and sign, once we do this, we'll replace our JPR with an MOA with the Department of Health. There was a little bit of language change as well in the bonding section of our Group B code to grant authority to the health officer rather than to the public health administrator, which is just more consistent with other areas of our code. And I think that's all I have to say, unless there are questions.
questions?
I don't have any.
Dr. Azriel, any questions?
I don't quite follow what you're saying in the grant, where you had a $10,000 grant, Department of Health, and this changes what happens there?
Yeah, so instead of, so right now we get, I think it's called our consolidated contract through DOH, and one of the many pieces of that contract is currently a JPR with the state that says we get $5,000 every 6 months. That funding was jeopardized for a while, but it has since returned. So instead of getting $5,000 again, the next 6 months we would get $10,000 after our MOA is signed, and I'm told that that funding at this point is sustainable.
You're saying that's basically changing the mechanics on how you get it, is
Right.
what happens with that?
Right.
Is this change, these are all things you were already doing, right?
Pretty
So
much.
it
There's
doesn't
more
really
math.
change.
There's more math. Holly Erdman, our water quality specialist, can review and approve more complicated systems that previously the Department of Health was in charge of. So systems that would require design by a professional engineer, and storage tanks and booster pumps.
So did we previously physically have someone from the State Department of Health coming down and doing these?
Not. Oh, no.
No.
That's why making this localized control rather than centralized is more protective of public health, because these water systems may be approved on paper, but no one's necessarily coming from the state and confirming that they are safe public water systems.
So if I follow, then the locals, we're taking over some things that were done by paper by a state agency previously.
Correct.
And now it'll be done by inspectors here.
Correct.
Okay.
Which is my understanding, there's been some challenges with how some of that, what we have in place in some areas due to that process in the past.
In what way?
The Group B water systems, that they may not have be exactly
Right.
how we would like them to be, because the state
Yes, you're correct.
had, gone through the paper process and not really actually had eyes on the ground seeing what was in place.
Correct. And at that point, it would have been beyond our jurisdiction,
Yeah.
right, to approve or inspect those. Or we would maybe go out because we had concern, but we had no code in place at that time to recoup our cost for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're correct.
Thank you. Anything further? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, now we are going to open the we have to have the public testimony portion of this public hearing. If there's any members of the public that wishes to testify? Anyone at all? Anyone at all? All right, we are now going to close the public testimony portion of this public hearing. Board before us, we'll go ahead with the Board of Health. First is ordinance number 2018-002.
It's
Madam.
3, right?
Yeah, it's this one here.
Is it that one? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Madam Chairman, I move for board signature and approval on Board of Health ordinance number 2018-003, an ordinance to amend Chapter 13.3 of the Kittitas County Code as presented.
And a second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Motion passes.
Shall we move on to the next?
Yes.
Madam Chairman, I would move for approval of ordinance 2018-011. This is a ordinance for the Board of County Commissioners to amend Chapter 13.3 of the Kittitas County Code as presented.
I'll go ahead and second. Is there any discussion on this?
Just by way of discussion, again, thanking staff for their work on this. I know that we had some inconsistencies in the previous code. This cleans that up. It also reorganizes it a little bit. While I'm hesitant to take on responsibilities that were previously performed by the state, I'm willing to give it a try and see what happens in this particular case. Hopefully we'll be able to deliver a better product for the citizens of our county. Certainly would like to have a report on this at some point in the future to see how things are going. That way we can kind of monitor our progress and see if any further changes need to be made.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Am I safe to close the public hearings? All right, we will now open the regular Board of Health meeting. And first on our agenda is introductions, and we have a room full of people, so this will be fun. Why don't we go ahead and start with the Director of Public Health? Yeah.
Robin Reed, Public Health Administrator.
Leanne Bradshaw, Community Health Specialist.
Then I'll jump.
Kristen Lamb, Environmental Supervisor.
Mark Larson, Health Officer.
Aaron Moore, Water Resources Program Coordinator.
Corey Wright.
Stephanie Hartson, Yes County CPA. And Sue Pfeiffer, RN Care Coordinator, Community Health. Amy Fuller, Assessment Coordinator, Kittitas County Public Health. I'm Kelsey Severson. I'm a intern at the County Public Health Department. Holly Erdman, Public Health.
Will Schwab, Public Health.
Kelly Hunter, Kelly's Mark Southern Service, just a public.
Mark Nelson, Public.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here today. Next is the minutes, the approval of the April 19th, 2018 meeting minutes. Does everybody have the opportunity to read through those?
Move for approval.
And second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too will vote aye. Motion passes. Now is the time for public comment. Is there any members of the public that wishes to make comment to the Board of Health today? Anyone at all? Anyone at all? Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comment. Next is our BOHAC report.
Robin Reed, Public Health Administrator. We actually canceled the May BOHAC meeting, mostly due to lack of agenda items. I will just give the Board of Health a brief update. We had a meeting with the BOHAC Executive Committee yesterday, and we'll be bringing a proposal to the overall committee probably in July, because we have some conflicts with the June meeting, to just change the meetings of BOHAC a little bit. We're really struggling to come up with appropriate agenda items for monthly meetings, and kind of questioning, the cost benefit of having monthly meetings for BOHAC. So we're going to be proposing going to quarterly meetings, and we're going to and potentially ad hoc as needed if things come up. And we're going to be working on the public health department side to really make sure those quarterly meetings are a good use of both public health staff time as well as BOHAC members' time in coming up with topics that we can really engage a little bit more meaningfully on. So just kind of a brief update there. And then we do have two BOHAC members here today, Nancy and Angela. So if either of you have anything that you want to comment on, this is your time as well. So
I don't have anything.
okay.
You want to move forward with the administrator update?
Yeah, I think I'll probably just, for the sake of time, because we've got a little bit of a long meeting and we have some important things to talk about, I think I'll just ask if there's any questions on my administrator report. I always try to give kind of the main highlights.
Takes place. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to have it out there so it's not.
Obviously, we'd want to discuss that in painstaking detail before.
Yeah.
Right now, we've allowed the neighborhood association to clean up the outside because there was no evidence that there was any drug contamination on the outside of it, but the house is still essentially boarded up and unfit for human occupancy, and it's in a part of Cle Elum that the neighbors would like to get the house sold. I think it's in everybody's best interest to get the house sold. It would have been nice if the owner's sister was able to come through and actually get the money to pay for the cleanup. She's been not somebody that we've been able to contact for a while.
That's just to clarify for me. I know with meth, it creates environmental hazard as in gets in whatever the linoleum and cleanup extensive. But I'm trying to, if it's opioids and such, what are we cleaning up other than just making sure the opioids aren't there?
Well, it's not opioids. It was actually benzodiazepines for the most part, but at least according to the State Department of Health, we have to clean it up. It was definitely a drug production facility, and so we have to, the cleanup is as a drug production facility, and there's no way to have a definitive amount of dollars that it's going to cost without getting somebody in there to take a look. But no fentanyl, no opioids as far as I know, just alprazolam.
Well, and I would assume we could recoup the costs spent by putting some sort of a lien on it for the county to get refunded at closing.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, financial update.
This was not in the packet. It's an addendum. Does everybody have this sheet? Okay. So just really, really brief. I mean,